One of my viewers, Steve M., went to a group photo shoot. Not only did he get great photos, he wrapped up the whole experience for me, and now for us. All about what worked and what he would have done differently next time. Let's call this the do's and don'ts of shooting in a group setting in a studio. Is this everything to keep in mind? Probably not. But it is a really good collection of ideas based upon one person's real experience. Here goes. This was Steve's second time in a studio and the first with a professional model. Steve's first studio shoot was with a stuffed animal. Not only is that funny and cute, but it's also a great way to get started. It sounds like Steve had a great time, and here are some of the points that he shared with me, along with some of my thoughts too. Number one of the props was a pistol for a sort of James Bond femme fatale style shot. But the prop cap gun was small and not authentic looking, so Steve felt that it took away from the overall look that they were trying to accomplish. I tend to agree here. If a prop is going to be featured as part of the shoot, it had better be the real deal. I'm not suggesting that a loaded gun be tossed around the studio, but either have something that looks authentic or use it as a small part of the scene and not one of the featured elements. Number two, the studio was using a pocket wizard style radio triggers for the strobes. Now, in your own studio, you make the rules and set the lights how you want. In my place, I shoot by triggering my strobes optically. Steve wanted to go optical, but they didn't want to change the settings on the lights. Their studio, their rules. So when working with strobes, contact the studio beforehand and learn their preferred method to trigger the strobes. If they're using continuous lights, find out what type of bulbs they're using so that you can dial in your color temperature at least as close as possible beforehand. Number three, on the same note, the studio had the lights set for f6.3 at ISO 100. Steve's preference was to shoot at wider apertures, and that would have been my preference as well. Steve was able to set his D810 to ISO 64 to get a wider aperture, closer to what he was looking for. Steve, great thinking on your feet and taking advantage of the D810's capabilities. On to number four. He felt there were too many cooks in the kitchen. There were 6 photographers working in the studio with the same model. At that point, they're dealing with logistics of who is shooting next and trying to cater to everyone's style. Additionally, the model is going from taking direction from one photographer to another, and another, and another, and so forth. Most models will do okay with this, but the potential is there for the model to get frustrated with constantly changing direction. Number 5, keep your wits about you. We've all been there. You've practiced and it's showtime, and not everything is going quite right. You're trying to change a setting, but it's not having the intended effect, or things are just getting worse. For me, the key is not to hurry. In Steve's case, he was adjusting shutter speed, but not making a change in exposure. Now, he knew that shutter speed would have little impact with the strobes, but in the heat of the moment, when you're trying to make a quick change, even some of the basics can get lost. I always tell myself, deep breath, pull the camera away for a second, look at the whole scene with your eyes, another deep breath, and then bring the camera back up to my eye. And remember, the point of a group shoot like this isn't to be perfect. It's just to learn and to get experience. Number 6 is white balance. I mentioned it earlier with continuous lights, but it applies to strobes too. Now, if you're shooting raw, you can adjust white balance when processing. But if you practice, you can get white balance on a gray card or just a plain sheet of paper, and then create a custom white balance preset in your camera. I have a video on that here. You can actually skip this step if you're shooting raw, but if you take a few extra seconds to do it, you can prevent yourself from having to adjust white balance when processing the images. Also, by setting the white balance properly at the shoot, your LCD on the back of your camera is going to be a more accurate depiction of what your final images are going to look like. Steve, I can't thank you enough for putting your thoughts together after this shoot. It would have been very easy to grab the images and put the experience, both the highs and the lows, behind you. I really appreciate that you put your thoughts down so that I could share them with everyone. So what do you think about group photo shoots? Is it a good way to learn? Or is it a case of too many cooks in the kitchen? And if you've done one or more of them, let me know what you've learned in the comments below.